Welcome to Mighty Married Moms. Join us at our kitchen table twice a week as the Mighty Married Moms, Debbie, Linda, Wendy, invite spectacular guests to weigh in on staying sexy, vibrant, and healthy, building marriages with soul-satisfying connection, raising happy, healthy, successful kids. Conversations with Mighty Married Moms will bring you closer to the life you really want. Episode 11.
Hi, everyone. Wow. Well, that was an exciting conversation we just had with Rodney.
That was.
Yeah.
He was so great.
Wasn't he?
Yes.
I know. So Rodney Turner is a really cool guy that I met on a Facebook connection, actually, a couple of years ago. He had a documentary that he had done with a bunch of guys in a barbershop. It was really kind of cool, and I watched the whole thing, and my jaw was hanging open like, wow, this is great. A mutual friend introduced us. So Rodney Turner is a regular working guy, has a regular job, but every Tuesday night he's in front of a microphone in his basement with two other guys, and they have a show called Married Men Don't Talk.
And it's a blog talk show.
Yeah.
Radio show.
It's a radio show, so it's call-in, and only men are allowed to call in, married, single, otherwise, hooked up, whatever it is, but it's only men. And they just riff on a particular subject. One subject they did recently, which is kind of interesting, is called living on the down low. Do you know what that means?
No.
Okay, let me tell you. I knew it before when I read the topic, but living on the down low are people, men, who are living lives, married, kids, whatever, straight up life, but they actually have a second life where they're involved in homosexual relationships. Oh. So it's called living on the down low. And so he had a whole conversation about that, and so these guys were saying, oh, I can tell when somebody's living, oh, really? I can't tell. So it was a very interesting conversation. But anyway, the bottom line is that for a woman, as Rodney said in our conversation, you can just hit play on that podcast or that cast and listen to the mind of men. And that's what I wanted to have us talk about today, was unpacking a little bit from the mind of men. I learned some stuff about myself that I wasn't happy about when we talked with Rodney.
You know what I want to say, too, that I really like about the way he has set up his show is that you're not calling in and talking to the psychologist. You're talking in and talking to regular guys who, as Wendy said, have jobs, and they're just getting together every Tuesday night, and they're talking. And I really like that format a lot, and I think that's important. Very important, because you're not feeling like you're talking to a professional. You're just chatting with men.
Exactly.
So you're really hearing men as they are talking with each other.
Yeah. And for 6 years, every Tuesday night, he's going live, from, I think it's 8 to 11 p.m. at night, 3 hours solid of conversation. It's a cool thing. So mmdt.org.
Right. So if you missed that again, it's Married Men Don't Talk. MDT. What is it?
Married Men. mmdt.org.
Right. So go check them out. And
he says they're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, they're everywhere. So I really encourage everybody to go see him.
Yeah. Well, what were some of the key things that really struck you guys? Like, for instance, so I'm a parent and life coach, right? And so one of the things that I would love to know is, was there a key takeaway that you found based on our conversation in terms of communication between men and women?
I know for me, one of the questions I asked him was, is that our relationships different today than they were for our parents, right? Because certainly the model that my parents showed me is not the model that I have in my home. And my parents, it was very traditional. My father worked all day, although my mother, she taught school as well, so she really had a full-time job too. But he would come home from running his store, and he would wait until dinner. He would sit in his chair and watch TV or read the paper until dinner was ready. He would eat dinner, and then he would go back to sitting in his chair and reading the paper. And my mother ran the household, worked full-time, took care of those kids. She was the one in charge of everything. She knew what was going on, right? So, my father didn't, he just felt like he was providing, and that was his job, and he wasn't really thinking beyond that. So, but with my husband and I, we feel like we're very interchangeable. Our kids can go to either one of us for anything. There's not like one person who does everything. We really share a lot. So, as I think of it, is there are two chiefs now. And when my mother was the chief, for sure, of the household, and now there are two chiefs. So when Rodney was talking about different communication skills and how men communicate differently than women communicate. I think that's something that's really important, even more so today, because we are two chiefs, and we need to know how to communicate with each other more effectively so that we can run our household as a joint venture rather than a single person, in a way, running it.
Yeah, I agree with you completely.
Interesting.
I think the same thing happened. I grew up in northern New Jersey, and my father commuted in and out of New York City every day, and so he would actually get home pretty late. And my mother wasn't really working when I was growing up. She was when my younger sister was growing up. But, we would have dinner. She actually got to the point where we were having 2 dinners because my dad got home so late that it was difficult for us to wait for him to eat. We were starving, and then we would have activities in the evening. And so, it was the same kind of thing where my mother was the one who was really running the household. And that's not at all the way my husband and I have raised our 3 children. We really have worked hard together. I didn't have a job when the kids were really little, but then I started working part-time, and then I did work full-time as a teacher when our youngest started going to school. And so we had the same kind of thing where we shared and pretty much shared alike, basically, ever since the kids came home from the hospital. And once I was done nursing, he even took turns in getting up in the middle of the night with them sometimes. Yeah, definitely. I think it's different now than it used to be.
Yeah, a lot more shared. I felt so called on the carpet. I was like, oh my gosh, when he said, because I remember I brought up about the kitchen and...
Oh yeah, we remember.
My kitchen.
My kitchen.
Mine. It's all mine. Right? And the funny thing is, when I was thinking about that, when I put my hand over my mouth, because I was like, oh my gosh, I do that a lot. I'll say to Jeff, my husband, whom I sleep with, who has the same bedroom that I do, I say, oh, can you go up and get the shoes? They're underneath the bed in my room. I say, my room. Isn't that weird? So there's something in there for me. I got to unpack that a little bit. But it was interesting because I was a little bit like, are you kidding me, Rodney? I have to bring my husband around like as a 6-year-old child and say, this is where we put the spatula. This is where we put the cups. But what I did here, which is I think what he was really trying to tell me, was that I need to tell Jeff what a priority it is for me that things get put where I put, because I take it way too personally. I go to this place of like, oh, you don't know where our cups go. You don't really, are not really involved in our home. And that's like, I hear Rodney saying, it's not a priority for Jeff. He's just putting the dishes away. And of course I'm happy that he's, we're sharing housekeeping, but nonetheless, that was kind of telling. So, anyway, I have to learn. I have to figure that out. My kitchen. I got to stop that stuff.
I think the only time I feel like it's my kitchen, and I do that once in a while, is if I've got a big meal coming up. And I'm the one who's prepared the meal. I've gone and done the shopping, and I know what I'm cooking. I give people jobs. That's something I learned from my mother, is everybody gets a job so that I'm not the only one who's responsible for it. But it does feel like my kitchen if I'm doing a big preparation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, absolutely.
And what is it about that? Why do we feel that way?
I mean, I think if you're in charge of the meal, you know. I mean, if my husband's going to make a meal too, it's the same way. I need to stay away because if he's preparing food and he's not doing it the way I would do it, I find myself going, aren't you going to do this first? And he's like, no, I'm doing it this time, right? So I think it goes both ways, and I don't want anybody telling me what to do. I just want to be able to focus and do, and like you said, assign jobs. And I know my husband and boys are much happier when I assign a job than if they sort of feel like, oh, you don't really know what to do, and then maybe I would get mad because they're not helping enough.
And not helping enough, and you feel put upon. But like you say, if you really carve out a specific job, they can, got it, peel the potatoes. Got it.
And I just thought of a similarity. So we have a workshop in our basement, which we don't use all that often, to be perfectly honest. But I don't think of that as my workshop. Even though there are times when I need to go down there and get something, it's definitely my husband's workshop. So I guess we each have our own areas where we feel a little bit more sense of ownership.
I know.
And that's probably not bad. I mean, we are individuals. We have different interests.
Right.
We have different skills and talents, right?
Right.
And so it's probably okay to have a little bit of ownership within a larger home.
Definitely.
So it makes sense. I guess it does make sense. So now I just have to get over Jeff's not knowing where it is and not reading. Yeah, well, the bedroom, I definitely have to
do
say
something about the bedroom thing.
I definitely. You call me on it. You call me on it. You call me accountable to that. I'm going to change
We admire
that.
you for being willing to,
acknowledge this.
Absolutely.
Bring that out there. I know. We were talking between the episodes, and they went, you refer to it as your bedroom? The two of them were shocked. I was like, yeah, I actually do. And I notice it too, which is what's weird. I notice it, and I feel bad about it, but I don't know why it comes out that way. But thankfully, my husband doesn't put on puppy dog eyes and say, "Ooh," that's what I would do if. Anyway, you get it. I'm a girl. Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I got to say, there was one time when I felt in our conversation with Rodney, I was like, I'm not liking what you're saying right now. And that was when he said, men feel interrogated, I think he said. And
when we're just asking questions.
Yes. And I'm like, interrogated? I'm not trying to interrogate you.
Yeah.
That seems so militaristic and negative, like a negative dynamic. And I'm just trying to be with you and hang out with you and hear what you're thinking about, what's on your mind. And they're feeling interrogated. Like that was so. And he said it more than once.
He did.
So I felt, how did you guys, do you feel like you're interrogating?
My husband, I don't think, feels interrogated because he likes to talk too. And that's actually one of the reasons I married him, I'll be perfectly honest, is because I can take him anywhere and he can carry on a conversation with anyone even if I don't want to. So
A trophy husband.
He has that gift, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
However, my kids do often feel interrogated and they will use that word.
Oh, really?
And it's me trying to find out what's going on in their lives and trying to understand, what did you do? How did you feel about it? Who did you see today? And they're not always interested in sharing that with me. So do you feel like Jeff? And I don't know, do your husbands feel that way?
Definitely that he doesn't want to share it with me. Or he says, it's clear to me that Jeff, or I don't know, guys in general, have a hard time even retrieving that. Like, how did I feel about my day? I don't know. Like, for me, I would be able to come up with a couple of adjectives. If somebody asked me how I felt about my day, it wouldn't be difficult. But there seems to be some, retrieval of, it's not right present for them. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you. My husband is different, I guess, and he's very able to talk about a lot of things. But as I said to Rodney, and I think this was an important lesson that I learned from my husband about how he communicates and how I communicate and how we communicate differently with the whole interrogation. I think when we were dating, I would want to know every detail and I would want to process through. Because my way of problem solving, I guess, or maybe more female, is to get all the details, and then we can start to solve the problem.
Yes.
And he pointed out to me that sometimes it's really important in a relationship for men to not have to process and just to know each other so well that it's okay not to talk about every little thing that goes on or every problem that may occur, and that is part of the magic of a relationship that's strong and connected, and two people who know each other well and love each other. And I felt that was an important lesson for me to learn from him, and how that was a big thing about how we were communicating differently. So I've always remembered it and always held on to it and always tried to respect and remember, think about that, be conscious of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I haven't. Yeah, the mystery. I like to know everything.
I like that word. I just like that word.
That's a positive spin on it, as opposed to being in the dark or not knowing what they think. Having just a little bit of a mystery and a connection, despite not knowing every nook and cranny of what he's thinking about. So I appreciate what Ken told you about. So thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But I do think that Rodney is he used the right word. At least for me, it meant it was a strong way to say it, is that men are solution based, and I think that's very true. I've heard men are the waffle squares and women are the syrup. Right? In the working environment, men will focus in on the thing that needs to happen and get done. And how are we going to get it done? And women are like, well, we can do this and we can do that, and we're kind of all over the place. And both skills are very necessary.
Right.
But interesting. I thought that was a great analogy.
Yeah. I had actually never heard the waffle square and the spaghetti before.
Yeah, it's a great book. I can't remember who wrote it. I know I gave it to one of my kids somewhere along the line.
Is that in the title? Waffle square and spaghetti?
No, it's Men Are Waffles and Women Are Spaghetti or something like that.
Really?
Yeah,
I haven't heard that
it's
one.
a great book.
Yeah.
It's a great book. And it's exactly what you're saying. They're very compartmentalized. And they put things into place and they solve problems and that's just the way it is. Whereas women are kind of like, all over the place and everything is mixed in together. I know not the people listening to the podcast can't see me moving my hands, so I'll try to describe it better. But the whole idea of spaghetti, if you've got a bowl of wet spaghetti and it's all together and it's hard to find the beginning and the end and everything's dependent on everything else and it's hard to pull it apart.
Right. And you get a little bit of everything in one biteful.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. As opposed to when it's very discreet, you have to cut that waffle and get the Yeah. So yeah, that was interesting, and it kind of leads me to remember what he talked about, the 5 love languages, which is just so cool. I haven't read that book in a long time. It's by Dr. Gary Chapman.
Yes.
For those who may or may not know him, but he wrote this book about the 5 love languages. Debbie, I know Linda said she hadn't read it yet.
I haven't. It's been years since I've read it, I just skimmed it.
I think it's the 5 things are 5 ways of. I'm not. Giving somebody gifts.
Right. Time.
Giving your time.
Words
of affirmation.
Yep.
I think.
Yep. My daughter could tell us because she goes to Gordon College, and apparently it's a really big deal at Gordon College.
Yeah. So words of affirmation, time, gifts.
We'll have to look it up and put it in show notes.
I know that words of affirmation are important to Jeff, my husband, and so the point is that most of us, once you can take a self quiz on which is your primary, so I primarily speak English. I was born and raised English. I can learn French, but it doesn't come as easily, and I don't think in French.
Right.
But I can learn it. So that's the concept, is that my primary love language, and I can't remember it, let's just say it's getting gifts. I don't know if that's really true, but if it were getting gifts, then I would say, well, if I'm going to love somebody, I'm going to give them gifts. And so somebody might go, this is nice. Next.
Yeah. I just want time.
I just want time with you. If you want to show me that you love me.
I just need you to say I love you every day.
Yes.
It's those things.
Right. Something specific. So I have to learn my husband's love language, which is, so I'm learning French because I care about him. I'm learning his love language, so it doesn't come easily. But I don't speak to him in English. I speak to him in French. I don't speak to him in giving gifts. I speak to him in words of affirmation or whatever. And so Rodney said in year 10, all of a sudden he woke up and he said, I'm loving my wife the way I want to be loved, but now I know what she really needs, and it made a shift, evidently. He didn't say those words, but I think it made a shift, and I know that book has really taken off, and I think he rewrote it for teens, rewrote it for kids.
Right. It's very powerful, actually.
Yeah, to really kind of learn something about the other person. So I'm going to have to revisit the love languages stuff.
We'll definitely put a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. No, I know, and as a matter of fact, I know that I've seen that website in the past 3 or 4 months, and it's revamped in such a way that it's very easy to get. You can click in very easily and find out who you are. It's very user friendly, so people can get right in and get road ready, and they don't have to read the book. The website's really kind of cool. So yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah,
good solid work.
Yeah, and it sounds like the things that Rodney does, his show, if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, just go check it out. It's long. It's 3 hours, but it's on Blog Talk Radio, and I can't listen. Honestly, I don't have the time to sit and listen to the whole thing, but if you can just poke in here and there and just get some ideas, and he and his 2 colleagues have some great banter and some really good things to think about, and it just really is useful for women to get into the mind of the man, and what is a guy thinking about, because they are different from what we are. And as I mentioned in the previous episode, our brains are built differently, and our priorities are different, so it's worth trying to figure out. I know the other thing I was going to talk about in terms of communication, and we were talking about the grunts, and my husband doesn't do that, and your husband doesn't do that, but a lot of men do. My boys do, your boys do, males who do.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
They grunt, this single thing. And the thing that, as a coach, the thing I'm going to share with you is, if you are in a relationship that's really important to you, and I'm speaking to the guys here, so women, you might want to share this with your men, right? If you're in a relationship that's really important to you, and you find yourself giving short 1 or 2 or 3 word answers, you're not playing ball. And I mean that seriously. In other words, if somebody tosses you a ball, you got to catch it, right? If you're out playing football with your kids or catch with your kids, you got to catch the ball, and then you toss it back. So it's also called an offering. Somebody gives you an offering, you accept the offering, and then you reply. So the idea is, somebody throws you the ball, you catch it, and then you reply. So if somebody says to you, hey, I should think of an example in advance.
How was your day?
How was your day? Let's start with something simple. How was your day? And the reply, instead of saying, oh, it was good, would be, oh, I had a pretty good day. Some things didn't go as well as I would like, but it was okay. So what I did was, you asked me, how was your day? And I threw the ball back to you. And it's that offering.
You
It's-
acknowledge it. You cut it. You
Right.
caught it. I love the visual of the ball.
Right.
Because what it does feel like is when I toss you a ball, you just kind of let it go through your hands and fall to the ground, and you just kind of look at me blankly. And I'm
Right.
like, I just threw you a ball. Just catch it.
Exactly.
So,
and since
yeah.
we're talking about marriages, if you're in a marriage where you're kind of struggling a little bit and you're not communicating really well, play ball and catch yourself. If we all have bad days or we all have bad moments,
Yeah.
right? And we can fall out of the ability to play catch with somebody. But if you're consistently not playing ball with your partner, there's something going on.
Yeah, it's a
and
good-
I challenge you.
It's a symptom.
Yes, it's a symptom. I challenge you to play ball more often.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, I just find it so hard because traditionally women, I toss a ball, they catch it. It's just so easy. And when you listen to Married Men Don't Talk, you hear them tossing each other ball, but they do it so differently. They do it with humor, they do it
Right.
with teasing, they do it with banter, they call each other out, they call each other names. Very, very different from the style that women traditionally have.
I'm sorry, my feelings get hurt really easily.
Yeah.
And I don't like sarcasm.
Yeah.
And I have to be careful with humor. I'm all right. Here's true confessions. My kids are always telling me, "Mom, you do not have a sense of humor." And so I'm working really hard at changing that and trying to be funnier,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
And let things roll off my back a little bit more easily. But I think in general women can be more sensitive.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you just have to be careful of those things.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 Makes total sense. That's the way it feels anyway. I know. So what if we would have Rodney come back? Would we have anything else that we would want to either push back on him and say, yeah, we'd like to challenge you on that, or is there anything else that we might want to unpack with a guy and the mind of the man?
Maybe roles in a house.
Yeah.
That might be something.
Gender roles.
Yeah.
They are different today. They can be different, but yet there's a legacy of. That's one thing I struggle with when you talked about the generational piece, is that who are we looking at except one another? How are you doing in your house? We're not doing it like mom and grandma and great-grandma, whereas our parents had the benefit of being able to say, oh, this is how you roll in a home. This is how you roll when you're married. It's like, it wasn't a big, like, everybody, it feels like I'm beating back the bushes and carving my own path. And like he said, it's not going to, what works in my home is not necessarily going to work in your home or whatever. So it can feel like a lonely endeavor. And I think that's part of the reason why we're sitting here today, is that, that was one of the things that we all talked about. It's like, it's a new world out there. I asked Debbie a number of times, parenting coach? My parents would never have a parenting. Well, what? But it's a whole new day, 2015, man.
Absolutely. I think you're right on about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And eating. Our parents didn't worry about gluten. Our parents didn't worry, right? I mean, it just feels like we're not in Kansas anymore. It just feels very, very different from even 5 years ago. Never mind when I was growing up.
That's an interesting question. I'd love to ask you a little bit about that, Linda, before we close up here. Talk to us a little bit about men and women in health and the way they approach health differently. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Well, I don't know how all families do for sure. My parents, I think there are people from my parents' generation who are very healthy and have maintained their health their whole life. My parents did not, and they've paid the price. My dad died of a heart attack. My mother's all her choices, but she didn't. No, she grew up in a generation that it wasn't like you go to the gym. That wasn't a thing. Nobody went to the gym.
Right.
Nobody did that. So she didn't have that. She didn't have that develop into her life and hasn't made that a priority. I think today we're making it much more of a priority. I think we're understanding that if you're not moving, you're either growing or you're decaying, and if you're not moving, your body's decaying. Really, you have to keep moving to be healthy. It's a huge thing, and you have to eat healthy. I think we're starting to recognize. I think I feel like at 50 years old, I'm the first junk food generation. We grew up, and it was the first time we had the sodas and we had the TV dinners, and my mom, she grew up on a farm and she cooked a lot of our meals, but she certainly didn't know that giving us Twinkies and having soda and, you know, the
We
little
had Twinkies,
Vienna
too.
sausages and all
Oreos,
that-
the Oreos.
and right, all that awful stuff that we grew up eating.
Yeah.
She didn't know,
Right.
and didn't know for a long time, and I didn't know for a long time. And I think we're now starting to discover that we need to do a 360 and go back to eating whole foods, and the awareness is raising up. But we're in a big mess. As Wendy said, as far as food goes, the same thing as maybe what our roles are in relationships and families. What do we do about our food? What do we do about the food industry, and what's happening to our food, and how do we get back to eating healthy and being vibrant, healthy adults, partners, and examples for our kids, and how do we teach them to be vibrant, healthy kids and adults as they grow up.
And maybe that's a great topic for a future conversation,
Yeah,
is
I
the
think
role,
so.
the roles that parents play in terms of modeling for their kids how to be healthy.
If I had a
Absolutely.
generalization to throw out there, the generalization is that women seem to be caring about the gluten and getting enough exercise and prompting their men, come on, honey, get out there, get some
No,
exercise.
my husband's diligent every single
Really?
day. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's good. But even about the food stuff,
Yeah,
too?
yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Well, except when he binges.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, I
He's
will
good
say,
until he has one bite, and then it's,
Yeah.
it's over.
Yeah.
at my nutrition classes that I teach,
Yep.
it's I would say 80% women.
Yeah.
It is more
Yeah.
women seem to be invested in general than men,
Right,
as
and
far as my
bringing it to the
experience
home,
goes.
and bringing it to the home, and saying, "All right, family, let's eat well, and we're going to prepare." Mom, this is awful. Well, it's good for you, so be quiet. Whatever. So that's an interesting piece of roles and the health piece. So anyway, I don't know where it all lands, but yeah, I'll be interested to hear more of what you have to say and bring to our Mighty Married Moms podcast.
Mighty Married Moms.
That's us.
That's us.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here with us today, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Mighty Married Moms. Tune in twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays to meet fascinating and inspiring guests who will help you create the life you've always wanted.
You can find these episodes and special gifts just for you at mightymarriedmoms.com, as well as a link to our Facebook community.
Where we continue the conversation around the kitchen table. Please also help share the love by leaving a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.